Hello and welcome to Beyond the Gavel. This is where we explore the intersections of law, medicine, and the human stories that lie behind them. I'm Rodney Peyton, and today I'm joined by Anna McLeod, and she's partner and clinical negligence solicitor at Smith Partnerships. She has a background that began in philosophy and then included early work as a police station clerk. So she brings a nuanced and empathetic lens really to the complex world of clinical negligence litigation. So our conversations delves into the transferable skills between criminal and civil practice, the changing dynamics of law firm culture, and the pivotal role of mentoring in shaping professional resilience. Her commitment to guiding the next generation is a powerful testament to leadership through service. So we also touch on how the legal profession navigate the emotional terrain of clients. They're not just seeking compensation, but for vindication in their search for answers. So that's why it's so powerful today. And I'm so pleased to invite you here with us today, Anne.
Well, thank you for that very generous introduction, Professor. That's very kind. I'm delighted to join you. Thank you.
Now, we've had conversations before, and I know your commitment, and I know your background. We say, well, I didn't have a female. And I want to explore maybe a little bit more about how you got through. And as a female now, you're doing a lot of mentorship of male and female. It's not directly sexist, but there are different nuances to what the old style was look like and the new style and new practice is looking like. So let's start. You started in philosophy. How did that come about?
Yeah, I did. And I think that was really born out of when I'd done my A levels at school. I pretty much knew I wasn't ready for the big wide world of work just yet. I still wanted to carry on learning, but I'd not done anything that I thought, I definitely know what my career is going to be. So I wanted to choose something to do at university that wasn't going to kind of limit me and push me down a particular career path. So I wanted to choose something quite broad. And as one of my A levels, just a small part of that had touched on philosophy, and it had really just sparked my interest. It was unlike anything I'd really ever done before in normal school, during GCSEs and A levels. And it just really, really interested me. So I decided to do that at university level because then it wouldn't kind of force me down a particular path. My options would be very open. And I absolutely loved that time at university. But I would say, I think a lot of it, and this will be a theme of probably what we talk about, a lot of it depends on you going away and doing the reading for yourself, which perhaps as an 18-year-old just left home in the university world, maybe I lacked some of the discipline to get the most out of that. But let's just say I really enjoyed the university life, loved the philosophy part of it. The problem being, of course, that when I did graduate with that philosophy degree, it hadn't pushed me in any directions in terms of my career. So then I was kind of left thinking, well, what do I want to do? And sort of through happy happenstance, I ended up at the firm where I now am. So I've been here 22 years now. And when I first joined, it was obviously with a non-law degree. And I was taken on as a police station clerk and magistrates clerk. So there's some professional exams that you have to do to be able to represent people at the police station. So I did those whilst I was working so that I could go sort of, on my own to the police station to represent people when they've been arrested.
Why did you choose law?
Say again, sorry.
Why did you choose law?
I think it probably came from just that thing when you're sitting and thinking, what do I want to do with my life? And I think really at the heart of it, I just wanted to make a difference. I just wanted to have a positive impact on somebody's world in whatever way that might be. And I was just fortunate that there was an opening that maybe wouldn't have been anything I'd have ever considered previously, but I just thought, I think this might be for me. And I think the world of law might be something that I might get on with. And I would say as a green, newly graduated young person from, just out of university to then suddenly be thrust into this world of the police station, the world of work and all of those things, it was a bit of a shock to the system.
Well, yeah, and you probably saw people who are well outside your own comfort and knowledge base when you were there. That, it's not your environment that you would naturally be used to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the police station, it is as you would imagine, and you see all walks of life, all ages, the law in that respect does not discriminate. So, you will meet everybody and anybody at the police station. And I think what I learned very quickly in terms of the skill of that particular job of advising people is that, part of my job is to advise them on the interview process and the law behind whatever it might be that they've been arrested for. And you've got to be able to break down these concepts and make them understandable by whoever it is that you're talking to. And that could be, somebody who's 15 or 16 might never have been in the police station before, all the way up to, 80s, whatever, and literally everybody in between. And I think what that taught me very quickly was how to adapt my style of talking to people and advising people so that no matter who I was in front of, I'd be able to explain things to them in a way that they understood. Because otherwise, if I walk out of that police station and I've brought nothing to their experience, I've not done a very good job.
Isn't that fascinating? Because a lot of times we want to talk about ourselves and we want to say, well, this is what I'm told to do and I'm going to tell you. But you're clearly showing, said, no, I was coming from the point of view of the client and trying to adapt what I have to say to the client. We do that in medicine. It's called informed consent.
Yeah.
Adapt what we're saying so the client can understand. And that was fascinating because the other thing that gets me there is you started off saying, well, I was green when I went to university and I hadn't done all this reading and things. And yet you took a job and had to do the study, and it wasn't within working hours. You would have had to say, this is my working hours and I have to study. There are a lot of people think, well, I should be allowed to study my working hours. They should be giving me the time. They should be paying me to do this. So you're clearly showing that 9 to 5, Monday to Friday sounds great, but that's not the way life works. There's sometimes you have to work long hours and there's sometimes to play. But it's not this balance that people talk about. There are days when you have to work and there are days when you have to play, like you had to study. So how do you explain that to the younger generation coming through, a lot of whom I have to say, because as Professor Rodney, I meet them as well, that say, well, my time should be finished at this time and I shouldn't have to do this. I should have my party time. What do you say to them when they try to come into your firm?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably I have noticed a difference in attitude perhaps as the years have gone on, maybe different from when I was just starting out, because I think probably my attitude when I was in that position was I was just really grateful that somebody had given me the chance at having a job, which I could see if I was going to take advantage of all the opportunities that were given to me would be a really long and happy career. And I felt really grateful for that. So I'd have done, anything to make it work. And this out of hours study was then a theme for my early career as I did then other qualifications. But now there is sometimes, I don't want to be too generalizing, but there is sometimes a shift, and it's almost as though, they're not in that fortunate position. Whereas, my view is the, jobs that are offered to people are an opportunity and it is what you make of it. And if you're prepared to put in the work, then often your path for progression will be as high as you want it to be. But in that, there will be an element that there might be some sacrifices that are asked of you in time, in terms of the time that you're prepared to put in. And I think if you invest in yourself, in your own career, then people, your employers, they tend to see that. And I'm sure it's then no coincidence that opportunities will find the people who have put the time and effort in. It doesn't always have to be at the expense.
How did you get into negligence?
How did I get into medical negligence? Well, it was really through the path of my training contract. So I'd worked in the police station department for, I think I did around 5 years, which I will always say, by the way, is the absolute best grounding I could ever have been given for my future career, because you have to be really adaptable to whatever the circumstances were that were thrown at you. And if somebody says to you, could you do this because it's urgent, it means it's in court that afternoon. So you really had to hustle, be able to work under pressure and work quickly. So if you can survive and thrive in that atmosphere and that environment, which is very high pressure, but there's an awful lot of reward to it as well. I really loved my time as a police station clerk. it really does set you up brilliantly for whatever else might come in the future. So when I became a trainee solicitor, first of all, I'd had to do a conversion course to convert my non-law degree into a law degree. And I did that 2 years distance learning at Nottingham, which I will say was a slog because, as I've already said with the undergraduate stuff, distance learning, you've got to be so disciplined, because I think it was 8 weekends in total over the span of 2 years. So there was an awful lot of.
Yeah, we both went down the same route. I did mine at the College of Law. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly that. Working as a trauma surgeon and then doing that to get my law stuff. On the other hand, that's
Yeah.
what's made this stuff work out. And you said about your training contract. Did you get a chance to look then across the firm in this contract until you
Yeah.
settled on Medneg? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I did. So I'd started off, so I did my first seat was in crime because that made sense because I was already a police station clerk. So I saw the role sort of from the solicitor's point of view, which is fascinating, but it perhaps wasn't necessarily for me. And then I went off and did a couple of more business related seats, which also enjoyed very much, but they weren't kind of chiming with what really made me tick. So then I panicked because then I thought, well, okay, have I made a big mistake here? I'm not really enjoying this. Maybe I'm wrong and the law's not for me. The final seat I went to was personal injury. And then I could see that the work was just very much in keeping with what interested me. And there were a
Something
lot of.
you were interested in it. There's a lot of bits and pieces in any profession where it's a drudgery. But having fun and enjoying what you're doing and enjoying meeting people. Some people don't like doing that. But within MedNeg, I mean, it's something you need to like doing. And if that lights you up and makes you feel satisfied, then, that's the guide. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be a job that you're going to do for 30, 40 odd years should not be a bunch of drudgery.
I
Uh,
think particularly in the medical negligence world, because the type of people that you're dealing with are vulnerable often. Sometimes they've had, some really terrible things happen to them. Sometimes they've lost family members. Sometimes they've been, they've had life-saving, life-changing injuries. And if there's a successful claim there, the whole point of that means that whatever the position is that they find themselves in doesn't need to have been the case. And that's a really awful thing for a claimant to come to terms with. So to help a client navigate that journey, I think it's a little bit different from a lot of other areas in law. And I think that's why I really enjoy it.
I work in the States, sometimes, and there are these billboards by the side of the road that really get up my nose with it. It's, lawyers saying, I've just won 15 million for my client. And the client's going, and I actually don't know anybody that would get that sort of money from a MedNeg case that would be smiling about it. If they get that, they need it. And, they've been in trouble.
Yeah.
If that sort of award, people think it's coming off the trees, but it's not. There are very good reasons why higher rewards are given. And
And
it's not a
often,
smiling job,
no, and often I would say they don't want it either. They don't want to be in the position where compensation's required. And I would say the vast majority of my clients, when they come to me, because inevitably conversations turn to money, and the vast majority say, well, we're not here for that reason. And they've often come because there's just a general sense of a dissatisfaction at what's happened. And it's often answers and information that they really want. Sometimes it's an apology, but mostly it's just to understand what's happened. And the money side of things, it's what the process gets for them, but very rarely is that what brings clients to our door.
Sometimes it would be easier, wouldn't it? It'd be nice and objective. You say, there's your money, I'm finished.
Yes.
But that's not the way it is it? And that would keep you nice and objective. But they have emotional needs. And some of the difficulties with lawyers is dealing with those emotional needs. Either they don't have the empathy, or they do, and it also switches into sympathy, which then has an emotional drain on you as a lawyer. So how have you learned to cope with the emotional side of working with somebody who's been really hurt in certain cases?
Yeah, it's really hard. And I think it's part of the role that's always developing, but it's really, really important. I think it's tempting, as you say, to almost, bond and become friends for these people, because, you know, when they come to you and they pour their hearts out and you're a sympathetic ear, it can make them inclined to lean on you, which is fine. But I'm always mindful that there could come a day in the future where we have to have a difficult conversation if maybe the evidence doesn't support the case. And I think where you can make that more difficult for yourself is if you've not walked that line quite right, and if you are perhaps more sympathetic rather than empathetic, it can be very hard for the client then to take that difficult news from this person that they see of, you know, as maybe a friend. So I think I always try and say to people, you know, because I appreciate they've already had one profession, as it were, medical profession, let them down in their eyes. They don't want to have to come and see another profession, yet here they are in a solicitor's office, the last place they'd like to be. So the least I can do is make that as approachable and least scary an environment as I possibly can. But I think you've got to maintain that level of professionalism, because, you know, you're going to have difficult conversations further down the line. So what I say to people is that, you know, whether the evidence hurts us or helps us, I'll always be open and honest, because I think that's often what people want. They probably feel as though things may have been fudged in terms of the medical care, and that's what's left them feeling dissatisfied. So if I can promise them open and honest communication, whether it's good news or bad, I think they really appreciate that. And I think it does mean on the cases where you do have to tell people that, you know, I'm sorry, but there isn't a claim for whatever reason, as long as you can show that you've been thorough in your investigation and you're open with them about that, people understand and they appreciate the work that you've done. So whilst it's really important to make the environment approachable, I think it's a mistake to cross that line too far.
And then part of that then is your choice of medical expert. So what are the red flags and green flags that you find when you're choosing an expert in a particular case?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, medical experts are at the heart of a successful claim, and also identifying those claims that aren't going to be successful, because that's really vital as well, to do that as early as you possibly can. So, you know, typically people who are still in practice, because, you know, they'll be commenting on standards of care as the negligence has happened. So you typically want people who are still working and who are up to date with all of these things. And I think, you know, it goes without saying that, you know, the knowledge of the CPR and all of their requirements in terms of that is essential. But really just understanding at the heart of what the claim is about, and if prospects are there. And I think one of the really vital things in the early days of a clinical negligence claim is getting the right pair of eyes onto the claim. And if you can get an early opinion from the right type of expert, that gives you just a steer in terms of prospects, then that's really, really vital. Because, you know, as solicitors, we're the lay people in terms of the medical world. We are not the medics, yet we're being asked to make judgments about prospects of success. So as soon as you can start to introduce an expert pair of eyes onto that, the better, really, because the last thing you want is to give, you know, 2 years of a claim.
Yeah, you've got the medical expert, I'm hearing, has got to have a knowledge of medicine and a knowledge of the law, because very well, not liking what happened, or in my opinion, I wouldn't do that, is not the same as a legal case, as saying this was the standard, the objective standard of a reasonable dog. And you brought up civil rules and things like that, so they've got to know the law side and they've got to know the medical side. They can get a lot of eminence isn't necessarily expertise, because they might have eminence in their side of the profession, but if they don't know the law, they can talk in waffleese, about things without being clear about what is negligence in terms of law. Yeah. So how do you impart that to the people who come to work with you, your juniors, about the empathy side and their working? What if you were to give a message to them about being empathetic to their people and also working with experts, what would you say would be the important messages you would give to somebody joining you in the profession?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a profession that can be massively rewarding, especially if you do help those clients who are most at need. And that's a fantastic feeling. But I would caution against getting too emotionally invested, because I think it can cloud judgments in terms of prospects of success. And the last thing you would want to do, we have wonderful clients that we want to do a great job for. And sometimes that means having to tell that client that there isn't a claim. And that's really hard. But I think if you're too emotionally invested, it can perhaps cloud judgments in terms of prospects of success. And then you don't do your client a proper service if you're, maybe dragging a claim on, trying to win it for their benefit because you feel for them so much and you like them so much, when the evidence really isn't there.
So over-promising and under-delivering is not really what it's about. And
Yes.
to cut this off at the earliest possible opportunity, to be able to manage client expectation by not promising the earth to begin with, but saying we promise to look at it and we will get somebody to look at it, and then we'll come back and tell you the art of the possible. I think that's a lesson that a lot of people have brought up in these podcasts, is to be clear right at the I talk about before a client becomes a plaintiff. They come in, but before you really push them into the legal route, you got to get yourself clear about what we're dealing with here. And negligence is clear in what it's about. It may take a lot of investigation, but negligence is negligence, has to duty, breach, causation and damage. And if you don't have that, you don't have a case.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, it's been great speaking with you today. You have had such an experience, and I think our listeners will have enjoyed very much listening to you today, seeing your path, that path going from philosophy, like a lot went into uni, not knowing what they were going to do, how you formed up, how you were prepared to work when you had to, and you still do, that it's not just a 9-to-5 profession, and it's something you must love as you go on. And I think you've taught a lot of very, very good lessons for those coming behind us. So Anna, thank you so much for today.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.